Welcome to Beans and Breakdowns, a podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between specialty coffee and the heavy music community. On this episode, I'm joined by Tyre, guitarist for the band A Wake In Providence. So grab a fresh cup of coffee and wake the fuck up! What's going on, caffeinated crew? Today I'm joined by DeAndre from A Wake In Providence. How are you doing?
Doing all right, bud. How are you?
Good. You're not in Providence.
I am not. Funny enough, though, our drummer does actually live up that way.
It's not that I've always wondered, because I know that the band's from like Staten Island.
Right.
But it's just, I find that it's like you'll probably get that shit so much where it's like, oh, y'all are from Providence?
Yep. And then that's the other thing that makes it that much more complicated, because the internet has lied to a lot of people and continues to. So the band, it was formed in Staten Island. None of us actually live in Staten Island anymore. So yeah, it's something that we might get into today. It's we've had a billion member changes, and I've been a gypsy my whole life moving around. So yeah, it's definitely. We're not in Staten Island anymore. It's very, very interesting when it comes up.
Is the band New York based though?
We used to be. I'm in Jersey now.
Okay, cool. Same,
Yeah, still tri-state. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you're not upstate. No, I'm just kidding. That's a little jab at my upstate friends.
Got it. Yeah, my mom lived up there for a little while. I moved around as much because of her, obviously, but we were originally from Brooklyn. So originally I was in New York my entire life, practically, until I moved out to Jersey when I was 28, I think, 27, damn. Around there. When my current wife, not my current wife, but my wife,
not your future. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is my wife. She's from Jersey, and then I always said I would never ever live in Jersey, and then now I live in Jersey. I love it here. I don't know. I don't understand what happened.
That's weird.
Yeah.
There's bands that I love that are from New Jersey.
Right.
But then there's bands that, especially from New York, talk so much shit. Like I was big in that Long Island emo first wave Long Island emo stuff. And they always sang shit about New Jersey.
That's weird coming from people from Long Island, because Long Island is pretty shot.
It's the same. It's the same thing.
Hey, anyone who's listening who's from Long Island, I'm sorry, but Long Island is pretty shot. I don't think it counts as New York. That's just me as someone from New York. I'm sorry to Long Island people, but it doesn't feel like New York.
If you watch Friends, anybody who watches Friends, I feel like they dig at Long Island constantly, because like Rachel, who's like the Richie Rich that runs away from her family, her family's from like Long Island.
Okay.
So it's like all the non-New Yorkers that want to like live, quote unquote, in New York, live in Long Island. Right. I have friends from there, so I'm not going to talk any shit, because I value their relationships. But
I got a couple of friends too, and they know who they are, and I love them. Those are my homies from back in the day, and they will forever be my homies. But Long Island's pretty rough. Yeah.
I haven't set foot yet, but I do want to play Amityville Music Hall at one point.
Right. I'm pretty sure we've definitely played. So I'm confused with the whole Amityville Music Hall thing, because there was another venue out there. I think at one point it was called Revolution, but before it was called Revolution, it was called something else. And I think it was Amityville something. And then what I thought Amityville Music Hall is not what it is. So I'm confused at which one is which, but I know we've played in we've played in 3 separate venues in Long Island, and I just can't remember their names.
I think Amityville did move. Like I think it was in a spot, and then the owners, like there was like a venue name change, and then it moved somewhere else. I've heard that story, but
I'm not going to say from the inception of me getting into metal, but like once I got to more heavier stuff, I started coming up in that age of like metalcore with like OG As I Lay Dying and like Miss May I and all that kind of stuff. So like Chain Reaction was one of those venues for me of like, oh my God, I need to play Chain Reaction. And then I've played there twice, And it's the first time was really cool. It was a little awkward because that was my first time on the West Coast too. So it was like playing to a crowd that I'm not used to because the old New York scene that I'm used to is unlike anything else I've ever seen. And I really didn't know what to expect on the West Coast. And then the second time we played there, I knew what to expect a little bit more, and that show was incredible. So so that was that. Speaking of like bucket list venues, like that's definitely one of them.
Chain Reaction's on my list. Like, it's crazy because I always thought it was really big.
Me too.
And then I talked to some people who have like worked there and played there a bunch, and they're like, that shit's small.
Yeah, it's smaller. It's you know what is realistic? It's long. It's not really wide, but there is like a little barricade that people end up standing on the opposite side of. But it's a very long venue, and that's not what I expected it to be at all. And then once I got there, I was like, oh, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's easy to pack out for that reason. So it always looks good.
Yeah. Like I remember watching before kind of the Hate 5-6 days. I watched a lot of the Chain Reaction. They used to have like video uploads.
Yeah, yeah.
So I used to watch
back when Whitechapel was a local band.
That's what I'm saying. I used to watch like the Whitechapel sets and stuff at Chain Reaction. It's like, I think one of the first Knocked Loose tours that they were headlining, they played there and it was packed, and that set's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That place does that place gets nutty.
Yeah. And also in Anaheim, like Orange County area program. I don't know.
Never heard of it. No.
It's a skate shop.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of shows that have happened in this like tiny skate shop.
Right.
Like Trapped Under Ice. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I know of. Yeah.
They've played there like back maybe 10-ish years ago, and it's insane. Like, just they had a scene at one point that was very crazy.
Right. Yeah, it's there's a part of me that really misses the old days of, for lack of a better term, playing in front of the same people all the time in like the same 3 or 4 venues. Like touring is incredible. It's something that I would have never, like when I started, I didn't think would ever happen. It's not even something I knew was an option realistically. And then now that we do that, it's an awesome experience. It's something that I wouldn't trade for anything. But there are times where I think back and I'm like, damn, I'd love to play at the warehouse in Staten Island again. It's just like it was literally a dirt floor, open warehouse, no stage, nothing. And then one year they started. It also doubled as a wrestling school.
Oh yeah, that's
so
sick.
they would take the ring out, and then it would just be this huge empty dirt floor warehouse with a gravel parking lot next to like garbage trucks or something. But then one year they started to cut it, and they put this big, because they didn't want to take the ring down anymore. They started putting this big blue tarp, and it would cut the venue in half. And that, like, I wouldn't even say half, honestly, probably like a lot, maybe like a quarter. It was cut really, really tight, and it would pack out, and it was constantly fights forever.
I love that.
Every time. And it was something beautiful about that time. Something beautiful about it.
That's I played a show last night in Montreal at this like venue that's been around, but the guy who's booking the shows there he's like fixing it up basically.
Nice.
And they said it's 130 cap. I don't believe that. I think it's a lot less safely. But there were 130 people there last night, and nice. It's basically a hallway with a bar crammed into one side of it, and then the stage is in the back, shoved, like, you know where they like build it into the wall,
right?
So like two of the side, like two
sides
of
it's in the corner of the yeah.
But it's like, anyway, it was scary.
Yeah.
There was moshing, and I was like constantly. I was missing lines because I'm like worried that somebody's about to get injured.
Yeah, man. There's something about those shows, dude, that they're unlike anything else.
The energy's like, unbeatable.
Oh, for sure. There are like, whenever I get nostalgic of that time, I'll like really like very, very much like a big dork. I'll go and watch videos, like old YouTube videos of like our old sets, because there's one from a show that we played. I can't remember what tour it was. We were on tour, but it was in our local area that it ended up coming around to. But the venue was called. I'm going to put that in air quotes. The venue was called the Bronx Community Hall or something. I can't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head. It's in the YouTube video. And I'll never forget that show, because when we got there and we were like, okay, where's the venue? And then someone let us in. It's in the basement of an apartment building in the Bronx, and it's like a community center. Like if you know that world, like if you know like the like kind of like, for lack of a better term, like hood apartment building area, if you know that world, then you know exactly what kind of thing I'm talking about. But it's like a community center kind of space. It's like a nice like done up room, at least, where you'll have like, they'll do like birthday parties or like whatever for the people in the community. It's awesome. But there was a couple of shows that got booked down there, and when I tell you, that was like towards the end of us seeing really violent shows. That was probably one of the most violent shows of all time, because the room was about as wide as this room, because I'm at the wall in my studio, and the wall back there, it's about as wide as this, but longer, and it had pillars, and it was like, I'm playing. If you see the video, I'm playing like next to and sometimes behind a pillar. This girl got her face destroyed, leaking. Somebody else got kicked in the face, they're leaking, but then they come back in.
Yeah,
and everything is like, all right, whatever. Some people did not, but some people made it back. The wall gets broken at one point, dude. It was. We've played or older lineups have played some insane shows that like I said, like just they have never been touched again. I've played like larger shows that are like, holy shit, there's so many people here.
Yeah.
But those shows, that feeling is not the same as playing to, like you said, like 130, maybe 100 people in a room that should only hold like 50 people.
Yeah.
And they're all throwing punches and kicks.
I love it.
Unbelievable.
Before we move on, I would like to talk about some coffee, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you have some coffee?
I'm not. So that was I am not a coffee drinker.
Okay.
Our other guitar player is, and I was prepared to talk about when I did drink coffee back in the day, because I remembered all my old coffee days. But yeah, dude, go for it.
So I've got a friend blessed me. He's been on the podcast a couple of times. His name's HANDSXFEET.
Nice.
Anthony, but he lives in Chandler, Arizona.
Okay.
He's worked in coffee for a long time. Now he's doing like mental health, social work.
Nice.
So working in suicide prevention and things like that.
Nice.
But he released a coffee with Pair Cupworks from also out in Chandler, and it's a really sick box.
You were holding that, and I was like, it looks like a CD. It looks sick. It almost looks like either like a box set of a CD or an old like a PS1 game.
Oh, yo, I remember those. They were huge. But yeah, it does feel like a CD box set almost. But
I want it.
Yeah. So this is just it's an Ethiopian coffee, and I think it's, what did he say about it? Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's a natural Ethiopian coffee, and it's got like a lot of just blueberry, like honey, kind of lavender notes. It's really good.
See, like that's the stuff that makes me want to get into coffee.
You should,
because I love like really artisanal and like especially like just stuff that like either uses more floral flavors and stuff like that. It's great. The thing that I know I can't get into it is I'm in too many different things, and I'm doing so many things that I'm like, if I pick up another one, I'm gonna be in trouble. I'm gonna be in trouble.
So I worked in coffee like 2013, 2014. Mm-hmm. I was a barista and working for a shop. It was like a job, and then I learned to like coffee.
Right.
I stopped for a long time, but during the pandemic, we were all fucking bored out of our minds. Stumbled across a YouTube video, got back into it.
Hell yeah.
And so now I roast like I work for a coffee roaster in town.
That's awesome.
But I also have too many interests. So
yeah. I keep wanting to, and then like the guys in my band, they don't all have we all have very similar interests in different ways. But coffee is one that Jordan like he literally anytime. So my house is the hub of everything. So whenever we have things going on, it starts here. I say 9 times out of 10. Our last tour didn't, and it was a little bit more complicated. But we 9 times out of 10 things start here. So Jordan would always either like I would either have to have random coffee that he brought that he was like, just leave this here, or I had coffee that was expired. Oh, yeah. Like, this is all I got. I got Folgers fucking dust, bro. Like that. This is what I could do for you. So damn. He starts to bring his own coffee. He brings his French press or his own vibe, or he'll get like Wawa if it's the only thing he can do.
Honestly, I don't hate a Wawa, but we don't have it up here. So right. The times I get it are few and far between.
Right.
Trying to get like, my band is, I would say, 3/5 coffee people.
Right.
With a fourth one halfway there, because every time we go to a coffee shop now, he's like, "What's that thing that I order?" And then I order for him, and he really likes it. But it's just a vanilla latte.
Right. But I had that's how it was with like me getting into deathcore, like the band that I joined before I started AWIP. That band, like the drummer was really big into coffee, and at the time I was younger, I didn't drive, so he would pick me up when we were going to band practice, and we'd stop at a Dunkin' that was on the way to our practice space, and he would get a coffee, and I would be like, let me try one of those. let me get the same thing you got. And every time we would either get, and this sounds awful, we would get Dunkin' light and sweet coffee. And then after practice or during like our break, we would go to a gas station that was close to our practice space and get 64-ounce sodas. Or we would get the 64-ounce sodas before practice and then coffee after. And it was a bad time of sugar. Bad time.
64 ounces of cola. That's a half gallon.
Yeah. For like gigantic cup of soda, and it was no joke. I shit you not. It was $1.
Oh, is it like like one of the what do they call those shits? The freeze pop or whatever. Like the
no, like icy.
No, not the icy. There was a gas like Quick Trip has it. I can't remember, but they used to do the $1.64s.
Oh yeah, bro! It was straight up just fountain 64 ounce soda for $1.09, and we were like, "Hell yeah, brother! We get 2 of those."
Thirst quencher.
Yeah, for the rest of the night, it was crazy. It was awful time. But yeah, that was my time of like pretty frequent coffee drinking, and I was like, okay, I think I need to stop.
Well, I think if you do a quality over quantity type beat, yes, you might enjoy it more.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because the other thing too, and the reason I feel like I don't do it as well is like I'm used to the kind of like what that mentality of coffee was. So it's like, because when my grandmother was alive, she drank coffee, and I would drink whatever she had. So she would have like whatever coffee she had in the house. I don't remember now. With what was it? Hazelnut Coffee Mate.
Okay, yeah.
And it was delicious. It was so good. But I was also a kid, and I was also like just mimicking what my grandmother was doing. Yeah. But I remember having it later on, like getting the hazelnut creamer from like Dunkin', or I know, which just to the coffee people, I know I'm speaking sacrilege right now, but it was like I said, once I stopped drinking coffee at that point, I touched it like a little bit later, but then I stopped drinking it altogether. I was like, okay, the caffeine, I don't want it, and then the dependency, I don't want it.
Yeah.
But there is something interesting about more like you do it at home, really like higher quality beans, like higher quality stuff. There's something very interesting to me about that, and it makes me want to try it, but I keep myself away from it.
So for me, like I don't use a coffee maker of any kind. Everything I do is a manual.
Right.
So I do pour overs when I make coffee. Even at work, I have a pour over set up there.
Right.
And it's become like from the COVID times, it's become a more ritualistic thing for me anyway.
Right.
Like it's
right.
You have to take at least 4 to 5 minutes to make a cup of coffee.
Right.
And so it's a time where you're able to like, you're not really focusing on anything but making this.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
there's a lot of sensory involved too, because when you pour the beans out, like the whole beans, you can smell it. And then when you grind it, it smells different.
Right.
And then as you're brewing, it changes. So it's a bit of a meditation at the same time.
Yeah.
It's kind of
that's the stuff that makes me so interested in it, because and that's what I mean. Like but that's why, and I'm saying it again, I don't want to do it because it's another thing that I know I'm going to go too far with. I'm going to be way too deep in.
Yep.
I need to get the most expensive like thing that pours and the best coffee. I know how my brain works, and I just can't do it.
it will be like that. I assure you, because so I had a perfectly fine grinder, electric grinder that it worked. It was a little loud, but it works.
Right.
But it didn't match my kettle because I have a really, really nice kettle.
Right.
And the grinder that I was looking at that matches it is quieter. It's sleeker. It looks very Norwegian.
Right.
So me and my wife were like, you know what, for Christmas, we have this perfectly good grinder, but we should get the matching grinder for no additional purpose other than aesthetics.
But that right there is almost more important than anything else.
Yeah, right? Because it's like, I want to use it every day. I'm going to touch it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm a firm believer of investment, of like, whatever the thing is, I would rather spend $3,000 on it versus the $300. Like, it'll take longer and it'll kill whatever else I wanted to buy, but I won't ever have to buy it again. And if I do have to buy it again, it's because this one was so old. And it's like, I got the value out of it. And like, very similar to what you were explaining. I tend to exposit at my wife for very long amounts of time, just like whatever thing is I'm talking about or into. And off camera here, I have I'm also a cinematographer, so or working to. Well, no, I'm a cinematographer. I don't know why I'm going to try to pretend that that's not the case. I have a bunch of film stands over in this area, and 2 of them are not the same as the other 3. And oh my God, I hate the other 2. They're not as nice. They both do the exact same thing. They have the same components. They do the same thing, but there are minor details, and the 2 of them don't fit with the 3. So like, they stand nicely together. The 3 of them, they fit into each other really well. So they take up less space because they're huge. But the other 2 aren't the same. And they're just so, I was going on for like, I would ask my wife, she just left, but I was going on for like, I would say maybe 45 minutes just explaining why I can't stand these freaking stands. It's just awful.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
Yeah, I understand. I'm sure I have some undiagnosed attention issue, and like some of that plays in, but my wife definitely has a different attention issue.
Yeah.
That creates much more, like, her need for order and organization is extremely high.
Right.
And mine prevents me from being able to be that.
Got it.
But when she establishes boundaries for me and like establishes like a foundation, then I'm like, let's go. Like, I got rules. I can do everything within these rules.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. You marry your opposite. You really do. Really true. It's so true, man. It's so true. Because me and my wife couldn't be more opposite from each other in a lot of ways, but it works perfectly for our relationship. It really, really does.
Even introvert, extrovert. Like, I love spending time with people and going out and seeing and being around people.
That's my wife.
My wife can sit on like here at home and watch like horror films all day.
That's pretty much me.
Yeah, that makes her so happy, and that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna tell her not to do that because it makes her happy. Right.
Yeah, I'm the one. My wife. So like, my wife, she's the one she goes out a lot. She goes. She comes from a pretty large family, a very social large family, and I come from a social large family, but a little splintered, so everyone's all over the place. So I'm the only child with my mom, but I have a bunch of siblings with my dad. So it's like, I'm able to just stay this is my studio space. I'm able to just stay in my studio space for. My wife doesn't come like my wife doesn't come home for a day because she's at her family's house or something like that, or 2 days. I am in this room for those 2 days. Like I'm not gonna move. I'm gonna sit here either writing, color grading, editing, watching stuff, reading, whatever it is. I'm not gonna move from this space because I'm like, this is like I'm in here. That's it, dude. I got something I'm gonna do for the next 9 hours.
So I can track with that only because it takes me so long to like distance myself from a distraction to focus on what I actually need to do. And if it's not something that I'm like actively interested in, like if I have to do work that I'm not super stoked on,
right,
I will find every distraction to keep me from doing it.
Yeah.
Until I've so when I actually do get on something and I've spent that hour working to get in a groove.
Yeah.
If I get slightly interrupted from that, it's over. Right. It's done. Like I'm so that also I kind of sometimes do have to lock myself like away, but that's not like you where you can just sit.
For me it's the opposite. This room is the distraction. Like I will like I've taken to like I'm gonna stay here for as many hours as possible, like, and I'll forget to eat sometimes, and then I'm like, it's been like straight up, like it's been X amount of hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. All I had today was a bagel at like 10 a.m. It's 3:45. You know, like that's my normal day. But when my wife is around, it's a little different because I end up, and not because she comes to get me, but it's more like I'm like, oh, I got to make sure this girl eats because she's worse than me.
Yep.
So she'll sit in her office and work for the whole 8 hours and never either take a break or go eat. So I have to be the one to be like, okay, no. If I know how I am, I know she's worse than me. I was like, I'll be like, hey, come over here. Here's what I'm gonna make lunch or whatever the case is, because she won't detach. So both of us, but that's what it is. Like we're opposite even in that way, that we both will get locked in, but I can separate because of her. Like I'll separate to take care of her, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, it's like so many of our friends that are married or have been together for a long time. It's the same. Like, they balance. But yeah. Anyway, that was like a long tangent about like, I don't even know how we got there, but
that was the introduction.
Yes. I would love to know how you got into heavy music. What was the background that led you to getting into, I guess, eventually deathcore and now melodic deathcore?
Right. I am not from this genre at all. I did not come up with it even a little bit. No sort of metal in the house. Nothing. A lot of R&B, a lot of soul, hip hop, and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm originally from Brooklyn. Like there was not a lot of metal happening at all. I wouldn't even say even a little bit. But when I went to middle school, which I found out later in life that middle school is not the same for everybody. Like grade wise, like one grade might be, but every other, like my wife's middle school started at 6th grade, and my elementary school stopped at 6th grade. So it's like elementary for me was K through 6.
Oh. And
then middle school was 7 and 8, and then high school 9 and 12, which I thought was like, that's just the norm. But my wife was like, no, it's 6 through 8. It's or 12 to 5, and then 6 to 8, and then whatever.
That's how mine was too.
Yeah, I didn't know that was the norm, or at least that's what I assumed the norm to be. I always thought, like, we would argue about this, like, no, elementary ends at 6th grade. What are you talking about? But either way, when I was in 7th grade, I believe, I met 2 people, because that was the other thing too. Because of that, it was different schools. So I met these 2 kids, Berto and Amy, and they were both really into Linkin Park. And I was like, all right, fuck it, let's give it a shot. So I listened to Linkin Park, and I'm like, holy hell, this is the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life. This is literally my world that I'm used to, mixed with this other thing I've never heard before. And then I heard Corn, because like I think my aunt had on like Music Choice or something one morning, and just was flipping through the different ones. And like she went to go do something in the middle of flipping, and then I think it was Falling Away from Me or oh man, I can see the music video, but I can't remember the song. Whatever the song was playing, but it was like another like very like that was earlier than the seventh grade thing. Now that I think about it, but yeah, got into Linkin Park, and then I moved to Staten Island in eighth grade. And back when the iPod Shuffle was the little pillbox thing that you would wear, and had the worst headphones that put all your music out in the world instead of into your ears. So I was listening to that, and then this dude, he was a para, so he would essentially, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's almost like a teacher, or like almost like a, I don't want to say babysitter because that sounds really awful in the context of talking about a teenager or a young teenager, but it's like it would be like a teacher or someone who wants to become a teacher, or someone who wants to get into social work, that would be with a troubled student who needs extra help in some way, shape, or form. Not because they can't understand or whatever the case. It's just they just need extra help for whatever the case is. And that guy heard the music blaring out of my headphones, and I was like, "Yo, what do you listen to?" I told him it was Linkin Park. He goes, "You ever hear Metallica?" I was like, "Nah." He was like, "All right, I'm gonna burn you a CD. I'll give it to you tomorrow." All right, whatever. Like, I'm not thinking anything of it. Go to school the next day. He gives me like a gold blank CD, and it just says Metallica on it. Here you go. Go home. I put it in my computer, my old E-Machines desktop, gigantic monster computer. For anyone that doesn't know, this is like, what year is this? Like 2004, 2005 or something like that, I think. I had that computer since 01. I still have the hard drive, and I was able to get everything off of it. That's a whole other story. But yeah, he gives me the CD. I put it into my computer, and it was the Black Album.
Oh, yeah.
The intro riff to Enter Sandman hits, and I was never the same. I was like, and then the intro to Sad But True, and then the album just took over anything else I could possibly ever think of, or anything I would ever want to listen to. It was like, there can't be anything heavier than this. Like, what is this? So yeah, that album essentially just started the rabbit hole of, all right, this is really heavy, or what's after, what else is there? So this was the days of LimeWire, so I'm just digging and digging and digging and digging. So it was like, it was a lot of Metallica at that time. And then when I got to high school, again, different school, I met somebody else, a friend of mine at the time, and he would constantly burn me CDs, but he did all the metadata, and it would be multiple bands and multiple artists, and did all kinds of weird stuff, ranging from like Head PE to Catatonia, and like 40 Below Summer to I was gonna say Deftones, but that's not a far jump. 40 Below Summer to like Darren Gray.
Oh wow!
It would just be all over the place, and he would burn me a random CD every like week or two. So just getting exposed to all this like weird, nutty stuff that I was like, I've never heard any of this stuff before. So yeah, and then Opeth, and then like so many things. So that over time, just whittling those lists down to stuff that I would consistently listen to. So that's kind of like the long, or the shortened version, because it's an even longer story realistically, but that's the shortened version of how I got into metal in general. And then I hated Suicide Silence at one point, and then I got to it again, and then The Cleansing was one of the greatest records I've ever heard. Like, it's just like the timing of different things. So it's like, that was the transitional record from Trivium, because Trivium was my favorite band for like ever and ever and ever. And then they started to, as they changed a little bit to what they were doing, even though they started to get heavier and had blast beats, I was already listening to like Slipknot and what else? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but just other heavier bands at the time, like when System was heavy back in the day, and just different stuff. And then that's when I listened to Suicide Silence for the first time, and I thought it was awful. And then I forgot what other band I found that was just heavy enough that when I listened to Suicide Silence again, it made sense. And then Suicide Silence led to, I think it's is it Die in My Arms by Carnifex or something. I forgot what that album is called.
Yeah.
But got me to that, and then old school deathcore, and then I joined a deathcore band. It was like a local deathcore band in Staten Island called Impartial Dismemberment. I was in like a thrash band, and then that band fizzled, and then I started getting into heavier stuff, and I joined that band. And unfortunately, that band fizzled, and then I started A Wake In Providence, and it was we are not what we were intended to be when I started the band.
I mean, even if you go through the discography from 2012 to now, there's some big jumps.
Yeah.
Because the very first, like, it's not a demo really, because in deathcore you don't do demos, but y'all's debut EP was like, I can hear that you guys you liked Suicide Silence.
Yeah, it was so there is a demo that exists out there. If you dig deep enough, you might find it. It's 3 songs. And that was because we were supposed to be a metalcore band, and I've told this story in different situations. We were supposed to be a like Asking Alexandria metalcore band.
Okay.
Because when I was starting the band, I was really heavy into August Burns Red, and this was around, I think, the Constellations era.
Best album.
That album is unbelievable. So good.
No skips.
I think, if memory serves me correctly, Constellations came out, and then not long after that, Stand Up and Scream by Asking Alexandria came out.
Was that the one with the final? What was that big one? That was like the breakdown was like.
I wouldn't even be able to tell you.
I can remember the video, and it's like
it has that intro. The fuck this.
Okay,
whatever that song is.
I forgot about that one.
That album was, I'll never forget hearing that and be like, holy shit, this is crazy. I worked at Hot Topic, all the possible metalcore things I could possibly say. It was exactly what was happening. I literally was working at Hot Topic. That album came out, and I was like, I need to start a band. I need to start a new band. We need to be this. So I found different members and stuff, and then we started talking about getting a female vocalist as a singer because of like what's the band? I always want to say Icy Stars, but that's not the band. It's another band. There's another
I Rustled Up Barrowlands?
No. I can't remember the name of the band because I didn't listen to them. Our old vocalist mentioned it. So my point is we were trying to find a female vocalist as a singer. And then he was
When's a Plague?
No.
Never mind. I'll stop guessing.
I think there's a W in the name, so we're not far off. But he suggested that, and I was like, hell yeah, dude, it's gonna be so sick. So we were like trying out female vocalists, couldn't find one. And then what's the album? Come on. The World Is Ours by Upon a Burning Body came out. And then it was like, oh no, we need to do that. So he came to me and was like, listen to this record and write this. And I'm like, this is it. I don't want to write that. I don't know what this is. I did that demo, and the demo was my attempt at deathcore, and it's the most, to me, not deathcore thing, but like when you listen to it for the time, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So if you do find it doesn't have a name. It's literally just a 3-song demo, and it does exist on the internet. I've been able to find it, but I have had a hard time finding it. So
I'm sure if I looked on YouTube long enough, I could get it.
It's not on YouTube.
No.
Yeah, dude. That's what I'm saying. When I say the internet, you got to dig on the internet. I can't remember what website it is on, and I almost don't want to give any clues, but it is on a website that you have to upload your own music. SoundCloud? No, it's not SoundCloud. But
it's go ahead and check Reverb Nation.
There we go. Reverb Nation. I want to say it's Reverb Nation. That might be correct. There's also a really awful cover we did that exists out there as well. But yeah, if you dig deep enough, you'll find that EP. And there's some really, really cringy samples, but it was the time, man. It was the time.
Okay. Is the cover like no, I don't think this is it. This is weird. Reverb Nation has changed Sorry, I'm gonna
You're
stop.
good. You're good.
I'm so curious to see if I can find it.
Yeah, if you find it, dude, give it a listen. It is that predates Serpents by I think like a year or two. And that was the first we did. So the other side of that is to also add to the age of the band. It was that we put up our music on MySpace because Facebook didn't like recently came out and didn't have the option for music.
I remember that.
And then we put it up on like whatever the streaming sites at the time were, because we only printed 50 CDs of that because it was for our local area. So we printed it for our local area, and we were like, all right, fuck it, and then we put it on MySpace because that's just what you did at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it started. And then Serpents was a thing. There's another song that was written in there because our vocalist at the time, he was into hardcore, and I never even knew hardcore existed. So he was like, we got to write a hardcore song. So I wrote this song that I think was hardcore. So that exists in the world out there as well. Has the funniest name of all time. For anybody who wants to know, it's called Bimbo Roberts.
Okay, that's the song I found.
Yeah, that's
it's
the
like
hardcore
a little,
track.
It's like a Katrina on the cover.
Like a Day of the Dead thing or something.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
Dude, this is why I was gonna say that I found a song called Bimbo Roberts.
Yeah,
that's the one I found, but this is not the demo.
It's right. That's not too long after the demo. So that's the second thing we released. After that, so we released the 3-song demo first, and then we put out that song because that was a song that we did in our local scene. Like, at the time, you would just play whatever stuff you wrote.
Yeah.
So we played that song, and it did well in the local scene because it had a 2-step, and then it had the when you listen to it, our drummer at the time is the one who does the call out in the middle because he's just the most Italian person I know. So he was like, yo, I'm gonna send it. I was like, all right, do it. So he calls out like mad different scenes somehow. Oh man, it was a what a time. But yeah, that was. I say all of that to say the band was supposed to be one thing, and over the years of like I said, like I didn't know that stuff. I'm self-taught with guitar. I'm self-taught with like writing stuff. So whatever I thought the genre was, or whatever I thought it was supposed to sound like, is what our music ended up sounding like. So once we got to Serpents, at that point it was like, okay, now we're taking the band more seriously. Now it's like, okay, we'll do physicals, we'll ship them, we'll do the whole thing. Like, I think by that point we were trying to book a tour. Like, it was like the band was growing a following enough that it was like, maybe we should do this for real and like take it seriously. So Serpents was like way more sat down and intentionally written and like figured out. And then we went to who I think he might be like a big name now, but Andrew Bayless. He recorded our EP at the time, like in our vocalist kitchen. And I don't know if I'm correct in my thinking, but I think he might have a Grammy now, which is
really.
Yeah, Andrew was the homie, and he just blew up out of nowhere. And I was like, yo, good for the boy, man.
I think he's got a whole pack on like STL tones too, or something.
He's like the dude now. And I was like, hell yeah. But we literally just tracked it in our vocalist kitchen. And it was a different time, man. But yeah, we did Serpents, and that was like around the age of like really getting into deathcore and like getting into like listening to Suicide Silence a lot more. But we still had like more melodic influences as well. But it was like, I feel like if you're listening to that EP, you can hear that like kind of metalcore and like more melodic influence like kind of creeping through that. So that part has always been in our music, but it's over the years I keep there are different things that end up causing the different releases to be written the way that they are, or whatever the particular genre choice is, and that's why like every album doesn't sound the same. There are shades of something. There is a through line because I've been writing our stuff since the inception, so like there is definitely like a through line of style, but it continues to change just because I'm like, all right, well, fuck it, I'm gonna try this now.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, you do have like a brand when it comes to riffing for sure.
Hmm.
Like I can hear a lot of influences that kind of run together. It's
Oh,
so
hell yeah.
funny that the metalcore, like wanting to be metalcore so explains Serpents now.
Yeah, dude.
Because like when I think of deathcore, like early deathcore, like Prayer for
Yeah.
Cleansing,
Yeah.
like even kind of like that Florida stuff, like From a Second Story Window, like just those
Hmm.
really early on, that shit was really raw.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even the cleansing, that's all tracked in one room
Hmm. Hmm.
together. And
Yeah.
I think that I can hear a bit of that, but then it's very clean, like Serpents.
Yeah.
It's very,
Yeah.
compared to those bands, it's I would say probably more processed in a
It's
way.
very, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
So
man. We that because that's what we were exposed to. So that was the sound. So like I wanted that really like I remember the at the time it was called like Chango bass tone. I wanted that like gritty but like tight, compressed, just clanky bass tone.
mhm.
I wanted ridiculously punchy drums, and then it was like all the guitars need to be recorded separately. The vocals need to be recorded separately. Everything needs to be to the grid. Like it
Oh
was
yeah.
like we got to make it perfect because that's what that stuff sounded like. So it's like listening to Apologies for the Week by Miss May. I was like the drums on that album are perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. Like it has to sound like that. We got to make it perfect.
Yeah, I don't know
But
how influential Joey Sturgis was to your.
extremely.
Yeah.
I'm not even. We're not even gonna pretend like he wasn't he was the goal. It was like we need to work with Sturgis.
Have you seen his workflow for drums?
Not that I can remember. I definitely feel like I've watched a million and one YouTubes about Sturgis back in the day when I was trying to record my our stuff. But I can't remember it now.
So this man still uses Drumagog, but it's
Right,
like,
right.
but
That's why I was using it.
yeah. But then we found out that Slate Trigger
Yeah,
is the goat.
it's still
And
still.
it's the best. I just found out that there's a function where you can drop waves instead of TCIs
Hmm.
into the sample folder.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I was just making my own trigger samples for a bunch of years, and they sounded awful.
Yeah, I mean, I know that because I was looking up, I was like, how do you make TCIs? And then somebody like, I think it was like Reddit or something, was like, you can drop wave files into, like, you just have to make a new folder, snare folder,
Right,
and then
right.
you drop your waves into that in your sample
Wow,
library.
I had no idea.
I just found that out like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Anyway, but he has a snare track,
Hmm.
and what he does is he makes 3 or 4 different dynamics
Hmm.
where he has snare hits of different velocities,
Right.
and then he follows the snare and the kick track and manually pastes on each one. So if there's like a roll,
Hmm.
he'll do like 2 of each. Like he'll build
Right.
the roll.
We used to do that.
It's so meticulous, but like there's
Yeah.
a reason it sounds that like as clean as
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. We did that on when I say we, I very loosely use the term we. Our drummer at the time when we were doing the not sample the demo. I'll never forget, dog. We were doing the demo, or right before we started recording it. He wasn't our drummer. He wasn't our drummer yet, but he was the drummer of the deathcore band I was in, and he started recording bands. When that band fell apart, and then when I started A Whip and I started going to him, we tracked all 3 songs. All 3 songs are live drums, live guitars, live bass because we had a bass player at the time. And then him and I, and when, again I say I loosely, would sit in that studio until like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and he was replacing every single kick drum because he might have made, or I don't know what happened. He got what someone called the kick sample from the New Rain by Born of Osiris. So I was like, oh my God, dude, the bow down kick drum. Yes, we need to use it. So he replaced every single kick drum by hand with the same exact sample. And honestly, it didn't sound bad at the time.
No, I mean, yeah. But now you just put a D6 in the kick, and then
you're fine.
You're good.
Yeah. Back then, it was like, nah, dude, we gotta use that exact kick sample. So yeah,
I remember they used to do the quarter. Was it Slipknot put a fucking quarter where the beater is?
Mm-hmm.
And
We tried that.
Yeah, that shit's
Sorry, good.
No, I mean, like, that's not something I would ever do because I'm not going to go to that link because we have sample replacement now. But
right.
And 99.
Yeah. So that same guy, when we had like I said, we had millions of member changes, and he ended up playing drums for us for a short time. And when he did, he got this thing that I don't know what the company was, but they essentially made like the kick pad that you'll put and just kind of like saves your head for. It was that same idea, but inside it had pieces of metal, so that when you would use like a wood beater or some sort of other beater, it would get really clicky. So you would have an extremely clicky kick drum like live, but still have the tone of a live kick drum. And it was like that. It was so fucking loud, but it was like the sickest thing I've ever heard, because it was like, oh, this is the sound. Like, this is the sound we've all been searching for. But again, this is what, 2000, 2009, 2010. Yeah. So it's like, and then over the years it was, the band started in 2010. So that stuff was written in like 2009. So it was just, it was, man, what is that?
Now everybody just like, you can just get a trigger.
So simple. We use triggers live. It's like, why would I not do that?
Like, it's so easy.
Yeah.
What's sick is dudes using triggers for gates now. I fully support this.
Oh, interesting.
I follow Matt Horn. He's the drum tech for Luke Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And with Falling in Reverse, they do like, people are like, why are there triggers in the drums and you're miking them? And he's like, the triggers are for gates.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's going to go over so many people's heads.
Yeah. And also, who cares? The whole trigger argument.
It doesn't matter.
Who gives a shit, dude? Like, who cares? And then on top of that, if you really want to get into it, triggers will make you sound worse. If you're bad, they will really show how bad you are. Like, that's the part that gets me when people are like, oh, he's using triggers, he's cheating. I'm like, no, dude, you need to be good in order to use triggers and for it to sound good.
Yep.
You how many times have you heard of drummer using triggers and it's just popcorn? It sounds awful because it's just all over the place. It's like, because it amplifies everything. Mm-hmm. So if you're not good, it's gonna show how not good you are.
He's preaching. He's preaching.
I keep my mouth shut on the internet, and I tend to see that stuff, and I'm like, yo, bro, come on. It's okay if you don't know what you're talking about, but don't pretend like you know what you're talking about.
Just fire back. Just
I can't.
Man. Well, getting into like, there's a lot of orchestration on I Write, and like a lot. And that's like more than I would ever try to take on.
Right.
Is that something that you've just been working on alone? And you're like, we should introduce a lot more of this.
So over the years, I've been wanting to do it for a really long time. Like, I wanted to do it on Black Sun, but I guess the best way to put it is I didn't really work in I've never worked with a lot of professional studios or professional mix engineers and stuff. So I had a different understanding of what that was. Because this whenever I did it, when I was coming up in my audio engineering career, it was like, it wasn't a lot of the stuff that we make or whatever the case is. It's like a lot of hip hop stuff that was coming through the studio I worked in. And whenever it was a band, it was more like a classic rock band. They just wanted to do like, everyone in the room, we're going to jam and have a good time. It's like, all right, whatever. So my understanding of what like a high caliber, high tier studio is you come to them, you ask them for certain things, and they just have it.
Yeah.
So that's not true. When I learned that after the fact. But when we went to record Black Sun, or actually it was Black Sun's. When we went to record Black Sun, I wrote in a lot of choir sections and horn sections that I was like, I wasn't good at it at all, but I wrote enough in because that album is very, very influenced by Evangelion by Black Behemoth. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, they got horns in that record. There's choirs in that record. I was like, I got to use horns and choirs. So I had the shittiest free horn and choirs samples I've ever heard in my entire life. But I was like, it's going to be fine. When we get to the studio, they'll have horn and choirs that I'll be able to use. So they just take my MIDI and they make it sound like good stuff. We get to the studio and then we're finishing tracking. And I said to the guys, I was like, all right, so let me hear your choir samples. And they were like, we don't got choir samples. I was like, oh, okay. All right, well, all right, horns. Let me hear what horns you got. They're like, we don't have that. I was like, oh no, oh no. What do we do? Because these don't sound good. But they were like, oh, but in my head, I was like, they're integral to the sound of the record. Mm-hmm. They were not, but I forgot what song it's in. You can kind of hear it in some of the stuff on Black Sun, mm-hmm. But we were like, let's just pull it down like low in the mix because they're not good samples. Because it was literally like whatever free stock samples I had with whatever I can't remember what I was using. And this is before a lot of free stuff got good. Because now you can do incredible stuff with free samples nowadays. And I can't, like I said, I can't remember what that particular brand, what that company was, but they were not good. All right, come on. Sorry, my cat. One of my cats is an extreme lap cat.
I have one of those too.
Yeah, there's my other one. Right, she's right here. She's knocked out, and my boy, he's on his own somewhere. But yeah, so I wanted to do it then. We didn't have the access to the sample, so I didn't do it on that record. Or we did it, but it was really pulled back in the mix because it sounded awful. And then Eternity came around, and it was like, okay, I'll get whatever the least expensive but good one I could find. I got some like Native Instruments stuff, and I was using that. But here's the kicker: you need to know music theory in order to use that stuff effectively.
I don't think I've heard anyone so readily available to just admit that.
Oh, dude, I got to Eternity and I finished writing it, and like I listened to it one day and I was like, this sounds like shit. I was like, this doesn't sound good. I'm like, why does this sound so bad?
You're saying music theory is important?
Music theory will make the music make sense. The notes will work. What? Yeah. So I did the most ridiculous thing, which was I'd learned as much music theory as I possibly could during the like mix phase of Eternity. I rewrote Eternity practically. And rewrote all these orchestral sections, and then while literally I was just talking to a student of mine last night. I got to we were like 5 days to 6 days out from the first single being released, and I was still like changing things and like sending it to the mix engineers, and they were sending me back stuff, and I was sending notes, and literally up until, okay, we got to send it to the label today. So that's why, and I talked about this in the past, like that's why Eternity, I feel like, feels slightly disconnected from its orchestral elements, because mm-hmm. it was intended to be there, yes, but I didn't know how yet. But I was dead set on doing it because it was like this was what I wanted to do. I bought some better stuff, so I got to make it work. But there's a plot twist to that, which is God Killer, because God Killer was written after I learned theory, or after I started learning theory, and after I bought better plugins. I heard how good God Killer sounded, and I was like, oh crap, dude, I gotta fix Eternity before Eternity comes out, because God Killer was written after Eternity, but it happened before. Because the label wanted a single to release, to announce the signing and to announce the new album. Which, for anyone who's listening who has been wondering this, that's why God Killer's not on that album. It wasn't it just was not supposed to be. It was written entirely as we need something to release so that we can announce you guys. So I was like, all right. And then I wrote God Killer, and it was like, oh, this is what I want to do. But Eternity was already finished. So we put out Eternity after God Killer, which is why God Killer feels like what should have come after Eternity. And then Eternity happened. Still very proud of it. Still love that album. And then when we got to Decay, it was like, all right, now that I have the theory knowledge, now I have the better virtual instruments. I have the knowledge that I need. I took some lessons with Francesco from Flesh God Apocalypse, and nice. and I got the knowledge I needed to get to understand the connection of metal and classical, because I love classical music, but I didn't understand how to connect them yet. So why not talk to the person who knows how to do it better than almost anybody? So he taught me a lot of great things. I got to ask him a lot of great questions, and it helped me get a better understanding of how that works, and not necessarily how he does it, but more so just how it works.
Right.
Because I don't want to copy what he's doing. I want to take influence what he's doing from what he's doing for sure. You just left. Why are you come on now? She left, and now she's clawing to come back. Sorry. Learn from him just so I knew, again, like how those things work, and like, for lack of a better term, learn the rules so that I can break them. And then that's how I ended up writing Decay, and it was, the goal for sure was, I don't want to do what I did on Eternity, which was orchestra section. Okay, now it stops because there's a riff, because I don't know what to do. Right. Like, how do you write? Because the question becomes, it's almost like counterpoint of like, how do I write something that is not just accented? How do I write an orchestra section that's not just accenting this, but it's either complementing or enhancing? Because there are points on Decay where it is an accent, but there are points where it's enhancing, it's complementing, or it is the focus.
Right.
So it was like learning how to say, all right, we're just going to play quarter note power chords here because the orchestra and the vocal is what's important. So it was like learning that stuff and whatnot.
I honestly love seeing the progression of, in general, like deathcore has completely changed over the past 10 plus years, because
for sure,
like I've seen a lot of the core disappear, which is okay. Like it's just evolved.
Right.
But hearing how much, like, instead of just like endless riffing, the introduction of the orchestral and like a lot more music theory, like you were saying,
right.
In certain bands, I'm not going to say all of them, because some of y'all be snapping and y'all don't like it. Y'all it needs to dial back. Like, I'm just going to be honest, like, calm down.
Man.
But like, a lot of bands have gotten very good at, I don't have to throw in sweep picking on every riff, but like, I can play power chords over an orchestra part and let the vocalist, or like maybe the drummer's playing something like they're doing gravity blasts that sounds like white noise. So we don't need to be shredding over that.
Yeah, like, we don't need to go crazy. It's learning dynamics, and learning that dynamics doesn't just mean how loud or how soft everything is. It's like learning like when to pull back and not. And the interesting, like the part of it too is like that's why I go so hard about the writing process, because it's like there is an intention to every note, every beat, every snare hit, every whatever. So it's like when like I'll write a bunch of stuff and I'll send it to my drummer, I'll send it to Jesse and be like, hey, here's the drums, fix whatever you need to fix to make it more logical. I bought an E-kit. I don't have it anymore, but I bought an E-kit to enhance my drum parts. So it's like, if I know that this is either going to be what's the word I'm looking for? These drums are going to be, we might not be able to record live drums. So if that's what the drums are going to be, they have to be good.
Right.
They have to be as real as we can possibly get them. And the parts have to be as playable as possible, so that when we do get to the live environment, Jesse is able to play them. And it's not like, okay, that's different from the album because it's unplayable. So it's like, I had my E-kit, and it was like very much like I was learning how to play Flesh God songs. I was learning how to play like the old Miss May I songs I loved. I was learning how to play that stuff so that it made more sense in my writing, because I was taking those influences and using it, but it was all from air drums. So it's like, sir, you could do anything with air drums. But
I got 8 arms with air drums.
Bro, facts. You could play the fastest kick drums possible with air drums. But when you actually sit behind a kit, it really, really changes. So having that really helped my compositions with being able to use the drums in the composition, and not just something that is driving it forward. It's like those are choices of that symbol needs to be that symbol tonally because of this reason. So like that stuff is something that was really big on Decay as well. It's like everything in that record, um, although not exactly what I wanted it to be, because I'm a firm believer of you'll never be proud. You're not, excuse me, not proud. You'll never be 100% happy with everything.
Right.
So there's a lot on that record that I'm like, oh God, I wish I did that differently or whatever the case is. But that's what you have the next record for.
Yep.
So yeah, Decay is to long-winded version to answer your question about the orchestration. Sorry. I just got really deep into that stuff, and that was like, I really want this to be a part of the band. I don't want it to be because that I'm sure you've seen it, and people have seen it a million times. That everyone will say everyone started doing orchestral stuff because of such and such band, and it's like I'll agree with that to an extent, but there's also a point where you have to understand that people are influenced by different things. So you can also tell that the bands that are doing symphonic elements in their music, listen to how different they are. There are such different like different versions of what that is. Like I not just because it's my band, but I don't think A Wake In Providence sounds like Shadow of Intent. I don't think Shadow of Intent sounds like Mental Cruelty. It's like I don't think that Disembodied Tyrant sounds like A Wake In Providence. Like you can Worm Shepherd doesn't sound like Shadow of Intent or Lorna Shore. Like there are different aspects of the orchestra and how people are using them, and I almost looked at it as the different eras of classical music are very much being shown throughout these different bands.
Yep. I mean, that takes so much, and this is not a dig. I find myself on this podcast having so many like old head comments, and I don't mean to be like that.
No, but go for it.
But like I feel like having so much music availability on the internet is both a blessing and a curse, because the algorithm, we are all, at the mercy of the algorithm.
Yeah.
And like you said about going and hearing Metallica and then going on LimeWire, like anyone under the age of 25, maybe even higher, has never been on LimeWire.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I had like a micro SD card in my phone.
Yeah.
Because it was like a Moto Rocker. It had a built-in MP3 player.
Yeah.
And so I had a bunch of shit from LimeWire that I like. If I hear songs that were on my Moto Rocker today, I can still sing them.
Oh, of course. Because that was the option.
That's what I listen to every single day.
Yeah. If memory serves me correctly, I want to say that the iPod that I referenced, I think the max was 120 songs. I think it was 120 songs, which meant, you know how hard it is to choose 120 songs?
It's impossible.
It seems like such a large number, but when you have, like I said, like my friend would burn me CDs that's anywhere from 50 to 60 tracks of just so many different bands, and not even full records. It would just be a bunch of stuff. Some of it would be a full album, but some of it would only be 3 songs or part of this record or whatever. And then now I have to choose 120 of those. I'm like, I know what I definitely want to hear. I need to hear Sad But True. I need to hear Wherever I May Roam. But I also need Hybrid Theory. But I also need Meteora.
Yep.
But I need that song from Darren Gray. And then you start putting in stuff, and that 120 is gone. And on top of that, it's all random. So on the shuffle, at least. So it's like you're listening to whatever that stuff is, and that's the end of it. There's no endless cycle of you can choose. All right, now that I've listened to let's say Points of Authority by Linkin Park, and I'm like, you know what? Now I want to let me go listen to Kendrick real quick. You know what? Let me go listen to Kardashev. Let me go listen to Garia. And you just jump around, and like it's so much easier to access so much of that music that I agree, and I think that you can get burnt out pretty quickly because it's just you. And I was just talking about this with my boy last night, and it's like also the loss of the push of singles and the loss of care for records or for full albums is the other side of it. That's really unfortunate. And that, to go along with your old head comment, I'm like, anytime I talk about that, I feel like the old man shaking his fist at the clouds. I'm like, just listen to a full album or just put out the album,
Yeah, just put it out. Like that's this is gonna sound fucking weird to so many people.
Go for it.
So I've been listening. Am I willing to put this on record?
Do it.
So I like Bad Bunny.
Okay.
I've been listening to Bad Bunny since his first single came out.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like when he first got DJ Luyan was the guy who was doing all the Latin trap beats in 2016, 2015.
Okay.
Anyway, there's all these Puerto Rican artists, Colombian artists. So I've been following his career since he was like a really kind of weird Latin trap artist. He's not that at all anymore.
Right.
He doesn't announce album drops ever. There'll just be a random ass album drop. And it's always an album. Right. He has concept with videos that he puts out.
Nice.
There's not enough of that. He's like one of the only people that I still kind of follow that does that. And any kind of, this is underground or mainstream.
Yeah. It's because it really is because of the way that the algorithm works, man. And also too, I'll give a part of it to, because to bring it back to Decay as well, like I understand how much of an ask that album is. Like I was explaining this to my student yesterday. Like the way that album came about and what it ended up being, there was a sacrifice or two I had to make that I didn't want to make, but I had to because I understand that it is a big ask to say to someone, hey, person who might not like classical music, but you like deathcore, would you mind listening to a 2.5 minute orchestral piece before the song starts? Are you cool with that? Like, it's an understandable. To me, I'm like, oh yes, that's what you would do because you put the album on and you listen to it. But in truth, the algorithm is not going to promote that the same way you would want it to. So it's understandable that that's a piece of it, of course, but then also the level of understanding either understanding your audience or understanding the audience that you're trying to capture. It's like, all right, instead of me doing it that way, I'll split the track. I'll give you a 2-minute orchestral piece that if you really, really want to, and I really hope you don't, but you can skip it if you want to, and that it's like, and I say the part going back to what I just said that Decay is an ask because it's an hour long. An hour, I think it's an hour and 1 minute or hour and 2 minutes or something. It's a lot to ask for. Mind you, it's an hour. It's 1 hour of a song. It's one song. Yeah, so it's like, hey, let's sit down for an hour, please, and I need you to listen to the whole thing.
But it's like this is what people don't realize, and that even predates because I was going to say like we still use vinyl time terminology, even though nobody even knows how to interpret it any longer. But like a orchestral piece back in the olden times would have been essentially one work.
Yeah, man.
And there's different like parts and sonnets and
you have different movements and different sections and all that kind of stuff.
Movements. Like, that's the word I was looking for.
You're sitting there experiencing this for the hour and some change that it's going to take for you to listen to it. There are breaks between, of course, but the option is you went to this this concert hall and you watched that happen.
Yep.
So it's like Decay. That was the influence. It was, how do I take my influence and how do I take my love of classical music and translate that into and I have a hot take as well. A Wake In Providence is not a deathcore band, but I'm gonna say that because like it's something that gets said a lot. I know that I'm wrong according to the internet, but with the way that I interpret my own music, I don't think we're a deathcore band. But that's just me.
That's a hot take.
Apparently that might be a hot take. We're gonna continue to say it, of course. People, I'm gonna continue with it. It's gonna actually no, not even, because even if you look at like the way that what's it called, like streaming services classify the band, you'll see it's like black metal and I think it's like symphonic death metal or black metal and death metal or something like that. So we don't, from what I've seen at least, and I'm basing that off of Apple Music if I'm being honest. That's one part. But what I was saying was, I think we're both saying stuff that we don't know if we want people to know now.
I'm over here. I was about to admit that I watched Downton Abbey, and
there it is.
And I was watching an episode recently where there's a young super young character who wants to get a wireless, is what they call it, but it's a radio.
Okay.
And all of the older people are like, I would rather just listen to it live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, even that, like,
oh yeah, man,
like a radio where you can't even, they have a gramophone so you can get a vinyl.
Right.
Like the radio is like this insane thing where it's like
how dare you?
You're listening to it live. Why can't you just go to the concert hall? And it was like, where are we?
Dude. It's always, that will always be the thing, man. Everyone is always going to believe that whatever the thing was of their time is the better version of whatever that thing is. You know, it's just the truth about that. So it's like, to tie that into Decay, it was like, it's true. Like I looked at Decay and I listened to it as a piece. It's like, that is something that when I wrote it and I was finishing the process, and I wanted the listener to be able to listen to it as a whole unit. It's one part. And then I'll eventually see if it's possible to put out the orchestral version, because there is a version of that out. There's enough orchestral. I guess I put it to you this way: Decay was written twice. There's the band side and then the orchestra side, because the orchestra goes the same amount of time that the band does. There's no point where one is not happening. And except for, actually, I'm lying. There's one beat of just silence. There's one beat. And even that beat has like a breath, but it's just a beat of silence. And outside of that, it's the whole thing keeps going. So I would love to put out the orchestral version. But when I listened to it, it was like, I would love to see this happen. I would love to listen to our orchestra play this, because it's like, it is a full piece from front to back. So that idea of it is for lack of a better term, something you would experience live, or experience something you would experience, at a concert hall, is kind of like, was a part of the influence and inspiration.
Well, there's your goal, is you've got to do a one-time show.
Yeah.
With full orchestra, record it live.
Oh my God, it would be, I would be able to say after that happens, I'm not saying that this will happen, but I would be able to say, okay, A Wake In Providence is done.
We can finish.
We're finished now. We did the thing. We played with an orchestra, because it's like there's a live DVD of Demu, or a live show of Demu playing with a full orchestra and a full choir, and it is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Bro, there's a Bring Me the Horizon playing at Prince Albert Hall.
Yeah.
With orchestra, and I'm like, respect to them for sure.
Yeah.
But if Bring Me the Horizon, like, those aren't the craziest orchestra parts. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, you can listen, bro. The beauty of the orchestra is that you can make that thing as nutty as possible. And, you can take something as simple as Bring Me the Horizon, and really, because that's the other side of learning that stuff, and that's something that Francesco taught me, of like, take a piano section, take a chord, and you could take one chord, and there are so many voices and so many pieces to the orchestra that you can take that chord and play it in so many different ways, that you could take 4 bars to play one chord. And you could just literally use one chord in 4 bars, and your your 4 chord section takes place over 8 bars. And it's like, just because of where you can start, what voice can come in where, what voice works with what, with the other one. And like, it's such an interesting and beautiful piece of just music and music history. And it's like, I'm like, why the hell not? Like, in this extremely heavy, extremely fast, and very aggressive style of music, there is, to me, a underlaying of emotion that I'm like, why not bring that to the forefront somehow? And the orchestra was the orchestra, and obviously the clean vocals, of course. Like those are the 2 things of like how to do that. So it's like, as those 2 things get better, then the band gets better.
Yeah, I mean, even talking about the clean vocals, that's such on top of the orchestra, having that other melodic element is really, really like, I mean, it's awesome to hear it, but I can't even imagine the undertaking of writing that on top of it.
Yeah,
you're doing that live fun, too, man. You're singing.
Yeah. So I do all the clean vocals, except the opera vocal. I obviously did not do those. That was a singer by the name of Caroline Joy, out of, I want to say she's out of the UK, actually. But she was I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it because the pun is too good. She was a joy to work with.
Hey.
I couldn't avoid it. I really wanted to say it. But yeah, she was awesome to work with. Very, very easy to work with. I wrote all the parts using a virtual instrument. And then when it came time to, all right, now I have to work that into the story, it was I writing the lyrics to the opera vocal, and then essentially giving her both the MIDI, me singing it with the words, and then the orchestra so that she could sing on top of it. And then we did that kind of by song because I was writing the lyrics and writing the vocal parts by song. Because I write the whole album and then I write the vocals.
Right.
Because it's like I need to, because all of our stuff ends up having a story in some way or shape or form. So I have to get through the album first with the story in mind of what I know the story is going to be, or at least what I think the story is going to be. And then as I finish it, see how the music shapes the story. And then write the lyrics and the vocals on top of that. And then we record it. Or I should say I record all of it. And then and then Adam comes here or he comes to me and then we record the whole thing. But yeah, it was, the orchestra was a lot to do, of course. It's something that is very hard because you have to write the album twice. And the opera was a lot to do because it's like, how do you add such a like powerful and very strong forward thing and make it a background the whole time? So it's like, that's why like there are sections and parts where the opera is the focus. Cause I'm like, nah, that tells the story, or that part of the story, better than what I could do vocally or what Adam could do vocally. So it's like, this will do it. You know, that's the emotional, or that's the correct emotion to convey this portion of the story.
Well, I have to commend you because like listening through it, I'm trying to piece together, pick each. It's just a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff in there. Like
sure.
I can't imagine writing all of that, especially like single-handedly for the most part.
Right.
In total.
Yeah. It's fun, man. I have to admit, it's something that I find I get a lot of joy from. For sure. It's one of those things of, I'm a firm believer of write music for yourself. And if people like it, awesome. If they don't like it, so what? It's like, write music for yourself and you'll have a great time.
That's $1 million nugget right there, everybody. All right. Stop trying to please people with your art.
Who cares, man?
Do it for yourself. And if people fuck with it, they fuck with it. If they don't, it's fine.
Exactly.
When they start talking shit about you, though, that's a different story.
Honestly, though, listen, if they're talking shit and they're making up stuff that's not true, fuck it, whatever. If they're talking shit and you're a bad person, hey, bro, I can't say nothing about that.
If you're a bad person and they talking shit, then
they might just be telling the truth and they're not really talking shit.
You earned it.
Exactly.
What do you have lined up? Because y'all had a busy 2024, a couple of tours in there.
Right.
But 2025, what's it looking like?
2025, if I'm being honest with you, is looking pretty light right now. We don't really have much going on yet. I say yet because I know something is going to end up coming up. But we have which I'm really, really looking forward to. We're playing in March 2nd in Asbury Park, New Jersey with All Shall Perish, 9 Dead, and in Internal Bleeding. A part of like All Shall Perish's like reunion run. When we were on the Signs of the Swarm tour, Eddie actually came out to one of the shows, and it was a trip because like we just got off stage, and Adam comes up to me. He's like, "You have to come here right now." I'm like, "Dog, I'm like we got shit to do. Hold on." And he's like, "No, you have to come here right now." I'm like, "All right, what?" And then he's like, "These guys, somebody you got to meet." I'm like, "All right, whatever." And I'm like looking at this guy like right in his face, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And he's like, well, you guys were really, I was like, holy fuck, wait a minute. And then it hit me. I'm like talking to Eddie Garita. But yeah, we were talking about the show because at that point the show was already booked, or we were already confirmed for it. And I didn't know I was going to run into him. I had no idea. No one said anything. But yeah, we have that show coming up, and that's March 2nd in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I'm sorry for everyone else that we are not taking that. We're not on that run or on that tour, kind of going everywhere. But if you are in the Asbury area or the tri-state area, definitely come out for that. It's going to be sick. We're playing more stuff from Decay, and really looking forward to that set. But outside of that, I am as crazy as it sounds. I'm getting the ball rolling on the next record, and kind of like seeing where that's taking me.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, that's something I'm actually gonna be doing today as well because I'm like, you know what, today's a good day. I don't have anything going on. I'm gonna dig back into that.
Man, I'm excited to see what the next iteration is going to sound like. Because,
Oh,
like I
me too.
said, so if you go and listen to the discography, like it's like I would start at the beginning and just go
Oh yeah,
through because
yeah,
it's super cool. Like
yeah.
even if you pick like a couple of songs per album, and
Hmm.
then once you get to Decay, like listen to
Hmm.
that all the way through. But I mean, the it kind of feels like not my journey as a
Right, right,
person,
right,
but
right.
it's like you are watching the journey of like the band.
Yeah, it really is a I'm the only original member of the band.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing our music from the inception of the band, and it's like you're I guess kind of taking your words. It's like you're kind of seeing my musical journey over the last few years, and it's
Yep.
like finding, and I've said this to the guys in the band right now, like finding the guys that I have now. It's like the perfect voice to the vision. So it's like I got all the stuff and I put all the stuff out and I write all the music, and then like putting it in the hands of the musicians that I work with. It's like you get to then hear the voice of that come together live. Because if you hear the pre-production versions of it, the music is correct, but oh my god, do the vocals sound horrendous? Because it's like at one point I was doing like real screams, but then I stopped doing it because it was just not, it wasn't work. It's not, it's another, like if like the coffee conversation, it's another thing to do, another thing to get into.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't, I need to focus on the one thing, the things that I already do. So focus on writing, focus on, I start caring about your vocals and focus on your vocals and like that stuff. So it's a lot of whisper screams
Oh
so
yeah.
that Adam knows what I'm writing. And then when he comes in, then we work out the tones and get it to sound like an actual metal record. But yeah, I'm also very interested to see kind of like what this next thing is going to be because I don't know until I'm like midway through and it makes sense.
Be a huge plot twist. You never know.
Exactly, exactly. I'm figuring out the story right now, so it's like that's the part that's like going to dictate where we're going.
It's writing a symphonic hardcore record. It's
Yo,
crazy.
that's what I'm saying. You never know. You
It's
never know.
crazy. It's in D standard.
Dude, I'm not gonna front. I was toying around. I did decide. I was like, you know what? Let me just try B standard for now. I was like, because we're already kind of using B standard a little bit with the way that I write. So I was like, let me just not use the rest of the drop tuning. But I realized it's like I'm not using it the way that I think I'm using it,
Mhm.
and it is an extension of of being in B standard. So um, it's as close to E standard as I could get. Like it's as close to Metallica as I could get. Because
Man,
E
there's
standard is in there. It's in there. I
there's
use
some
it.
E standard riffs go hard.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It's funny because I was playing it to my wife, and I have a guitar right now that's in E standard, yeah, B standard. It's the I haven't had a good seven. I have so many seven strings. I don't own a single six string, unfortunately. But none of them are in just straight up B standard. So I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, "This is what you're used to hearing." And I play like regular stuff that she's used to hearing because she's not really into metal, but she's getting into it now that we've been together. And then I played like, but sorry, one more backstory piece. Her stepdad is really into classic rock.
Okay.
So I was like, this is what you're used to hearing because I was explaining the whole like tuning thing to her, and it was like just an open power chord of B standard. And then I was like, but this is like regular guitar. And I played E standard, and she literally lit up. She was like, that's regular guitar noise. That sounds like regular guitar. That's what I'm used to hearing. I was like, yeah, that's
Just
why
the
I
big
can't.
floppy B.
Yeah, exactly. And they go right to E standard. And she's like,
Smoke on the
oh
water.
yeah,
Just
exactly, exactly. So yeah,
man.
it was really funny. It was very funny to see her face react to that. It talks about the whole like how people react to music. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
the nostalgia that's like I find all that interesting as I'm getting older.
For sure.
And
Sure.
like you kind of go back and revisit things like that you remember, and I'm like, man, I
Yeah,
didn't
man.
realize how special this actually was.
Yeah, dude. I'm my wife got me a PlayStation 1 for Christmas, and I'm currently playing. My favorite video game series is Metal Gear Solid,
Hmm.
and I'm currently playing Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PlayStation 1. Because there and it's funny because I'll spare you a lot of the details, but I'll tell you one specific one. For anyone that knows that game, in the beginning, in the very, very beginning of the when you put the disc in the game after the classic PlayStation sound finishes, there's a Konami sound that plays, and it's just like these little doos. Like I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna spare everybody of it, but I did it before it started, and my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Just trust me. It'll happen." And it's a beautiful moment that I haven't heard in like 20 years. I was like, it's going to be amazing. Just hold on.
Oh,
And then it started, and then she fell out laughing because I was identical to what it was. And I'm like, this talking about going back and hearing those moments that are just so specific in time. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's even like I loved like I had PS1 and all that, but the
Yeah.
game that was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 PS2.
Okay. Hell yeah.
It's got
It was 3 for me.
Yeah, it's got the Neversoft eyeball, like
Yep.
the squelch,
Mm-hmm.
and then that whole soundtrack where I think it's even the home screen where you pick your skater.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with Ace of Spades.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that was Underground.
No, because there's the Underground did it too, but I think I can't remember if I think it's Pro Skater 4 because that's the one that I played the most. Maybe it's 3.
I could swear that was Underground. We were both wrong, and it's like fucking 2. But
yeah, but then even because it's got Destroy the World from Guttermouth on it, which I got to mix them one time with Agent Orange and the Queers.
Nice.
And hearing them play that live when I was in my 20s, I was like, this is wild.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that this was the band that did it. Yeah, but there's I'm pretty sure it's Pro Skater 4. I'm probably wrong.
Okay.
But
all right.
The whole soundtrack, I remember that entire soundtrack.
Yeah, man. The one for Underground was so sick. For 3 and Underground was so sick. Like, cause I love that you can just pick and choose songs and pull stuff out of the playthrough or playlist and stuff. There was a song on I want to say it was Underground called I Like Eating Glass. That song, dude, I can't remember the artist, but look up that song. It is a trip of a track. I Like Eating Glass from I'm pretty sure it's Tony Hawk Underground. It is a nut job of a song, dude. There's
Wait, is it called Like Eating Glass?
I think so.
By Block Party?
Maybe.
Okay.
That sounds correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another song on there too. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it with I Like Dirt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I Like Dirt from that same soundtrack. That song is the one I'm thinking of. That song is nuts. Like Eating Glass, I think, is on that soundtrack, and that song is just really good.
I Like Dirt by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had no idea that that's who that was. It's such a trip of a soundtrack. Such a trip.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, DeAndre.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you hanging out, spending some Saturday time.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me on here, man. So it's always fun to talk about just all the random stuff that has been happening for the last 15 years of the band and then 20 years of being a musician.
Not to make us feel old or anything.
Right.
I just got one last question for you before we go.
Yeah, dog. Hell yeah.
What's your favorite city for beans and breakdowns?
Favorite city for beans and breakdowns? Maybe
not beans.
Okay. It's funny because when you say beans, I immediately think of black beans. My favorite city for beans and breakdowns. You see, I want to say, and I feel like this might be the cliche answer, but I want to say New York, because of the time that the band came up in and what that looked like and what those shows looked like and all that kind of stuff. But if I have to look at it from where we are now and what we're doing currently, and I'm basing it off of this last tour, the Atlanta show was unbelievable. the Atlanta show was unbelievable. It wasn't even like the crowd was going insane, but it was something about the energy. And I broke a string at that show too, and I had to change my guitar, the whole thing. But there was something about that show that was great. And if I have to give like one more, I would say Arizona. When we played at Nile Theater, it was amazing.
Nile Theaters, I want to play there so bad.
Dude, we played. Sorry to extend that last question. We played Underground the first time in 2022. Right? Yeah, 2023. Yeah, we played Nile Underground in 2023, and then when we were leaving, by that point we already had the Angel Maker tour booked, and we were leaving the venue, and someone was like, "Oh," one of us was like, "Oh, isn't it at this venue?" And they were like, "No, it's upstairs." They opened those doors, and I was like, "Oh, fuck!" I was like, and it was like this was a moment of I want to play this venue so bad, and then it was like, "Oh wait, no, we're playing this venue," and that's a whole other story for a whole other time. But it was nutty still. But when we got to come back and we got to do it right, it was incredible. But yeah, something about that Atlanta show, man. The vibes were right.
Was it at the Mask?
The Masquerade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to play the old Masquerade?
No, we played in Atlanta. I can't remember the name of the venue on the Angel Maker run. That venue was really cool. But now that I think about it, both Atlanta shows, there was something about the vibe of those Atlanta shows that were just correct.
That Angel Maker tour.
I have, oh wait, you know what? I have what's the name right here. Let me see, hold on. Oh, that's actually harder to get to than I thought it was. I was going to try to get the laminate.
It's the Buckhead Theater.
That was the Angel Maker run?
No, wait. That's the Black Dahlia.
Hold up.
Black Dahlia, Dying Fetus. Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, that would have been crazy if we were on that.
It was in October?
Let's see. It was, I got you right here. It was Terminal West.
Oh, I have never been there.
Yeah, Terminal West on the Angel Maker run was wild. It just same thing. It wasn't that the show was like uncontrolled and crazy and people were jumping all over each other, but it was just something about the vibe of the crowd. And you see what the problem is? You asked that question, and now I think of every show and I'm like, oh, but Dallas was amazing. Oh, but this place was amazing. Yeah, so it's just like,
this is Midtown. Okay, yeah. So I've spent a lot of time in Atlanta just because I'm from Georgia.
Right.
And that area used to be so run down, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was like old factories and stuff, but then in the past like 5 to 10 years, it's gotten like really bougie.
Yeah. That it definitely seemed like that. Yeah, Terminal West was awesome. Masquerade was awesome, and then what was it, like the Lone Star or Star something ballroom in Texas? That we've played there a few times, and that place is so sick, sick. But I'm all over the place when it comes to I'm sorry, Southside Music Hall in Dallas.
Okay.
Come and Take It goes hard too. It's too hard. I can't pick.
Come and Take It in Austin?
Yeah, that place goes hard.
There's a lot of bands I talk to from like Texas that love that venue.
Yeah, it's so sick. We honestly had a pretty bad time there the last time, unfortunately. Just the sound guy just like ruined our set. But the venue handled it extremely well. They made up for it immediately, and they made up for it very well, very nicely. And then the crowd was, even though we were having all these problems, the crowd still went 110%. So like stuff like that makes it hard to choose.
Yeah.
So I got no idea. I'd say I'm going to just say the whole country just to make it simple.
the U.S.
It's just the U.S. That's just
America,
what it is.
Like Hank Hill style. America.
Exactly.
Well, DeAndre, thanks again. This has been a lot of fun. Hope to see you on a tour maybe in 2025.
Hell yeah, man.
But if not, we'll see each other at some point.
Oh, definitely, man. We'll make our way back up to Canada. Yeah, we're definitely gonna make our way back up to Canada for sure. It's a good time up there as well.
Hell yeah. We'll have a great Saturday.
For sure, dude. You too, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beans and Breakdowns. I want to say a huge thanks to DeAndre for hanging out on the podcast. Be sure to check out I Write to You, My Darling Decay. the newest LP from A Wake In Providence, available on all streaming platforms. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. You can find out more information about the podcast by following us on Instagram at Beans and Breakdowns or on the web at beansandbreakdowns.com. Until next week, be sure to stay caffeinated and wake the fuck up!